Hello, I'm Dave Feinlieb, and this is Beyond the Shelf. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for success. You can find out more about how we're helping leading brands like Pepsi, Newell, Revlon, and Mondelez build product detail page, retail media, and sales enablement content more than 80% faster than their category competitors at itsrapid.ai. My guest on today's show is Parbinder Dhariwal, Vice President and General Manager of CVS Media Exchange. Prior to CMX, Parbinder was industry head of beauty, health, and wellness consumables at Walmart Connect, and before that, beauty lead at Walmart Connect. Parbinder held roles as Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development at ICX Media, Vice President of Global Accounts at Spotify, and a number of roles of increasing responsibility at CBS Interactive, where he became Commercial Director in the UK and Vice President of B2B and International based in New York. We discussed Parbinder's perspective on retail media, the groundbreaking work that he and his team are doing at CVS Media Exchange, and his predictions for the next 12 months and beyond. Please enjoy my conversation with Parbinder Dhariwal. Parbinder, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David. It's great to be speaking with you, and I'm glad we got this one on the book. So how have you been?
I've been great. Now, the first thing I learned is I should be using the one-syllable version, so it's Parbs if I've not being overly casual.
You're not, and go with that because I get tongue-tied with my own name, so I don't want you to be doing that. So, but yeah, Parbs is good from here on.
I love it. Well, will you take us back? How did you get your start in the space?
Yeah, so it's been quite the journey. I've been in the advertising industry, predominantly digital. I did start out in magazines, but I've been in the advertising space for, coming up to 25 years. Before I joined CMX, and just as we're using Parbs for Parbinder, CMX is CVS Media Exchange, which is our retail media network. But before I joined CMX, I had the opportunity to launch and lead a lot of different businesses and brands that are very diverse, be it around, the in-housing of Walmart Connect, the work that we did around Spotify, worked at CBS Interactive, worked at CNET Networks back in the day as well. But yeah, the piece that I've always seen in terms of connectivity and that I'm really passionate about in this industry, especially the speed at which this industry is changing, is as we think about, connectivity with other people within organizations, learning from different individuals from across, not just only the organizations that you work with, but then also I've had the pleasure of leading global teams across multiple different countries and time zones, and learning the cultures and learning the ways of working has always been something that has been important and core to me, and important and core to my growth as an individual, as I think about leadership and the way in which I want to lead in my own capacity. About a year and a half ago, I came to CMX and joined here CVS Health to really lead the charge and scale the retail media network, which we're CVS. You probably know us as an organization. Health and wellness is at the center of everything that we do, and my priority around CMX is to think about how do we just scale this team, but scale the opportunity within the industry that we're seeing. And for those of your listeners that are not familiar with CMX, with the retail media network for CVS Pharmacy, been in the market for around about 3.5 years. We have more than 74 million consumers who engage with Extra Care. Extra Care is what the business is predicated on. CMX is predicated on. We've built across that loyalty program, but we also think about how do we transact and and deliver message to, the 5 million consumers that come into our stores every single day, or the 139 million users who visit our digital platforms as well monthly. So we have a big remit here and a huge opportunity to really change this industry.
So some pretty big reach, if I understand the numbers correctly.
Yeah, look, we're a national retailer, and we operate in the sectors that are incredibly important to consumers. Beauty, health, wellness, personal care. Our business is it's important to the consumers. Our brand and our stores are important to consumers within their communities. We're incredibly trusted by our consumers also, and it's absolutely our opportunity to think about how do we leverage that.
Well, I want to talk more about what you're doing with retail media. Before I do that, you've got a pretty cool story about how you started. If I'm guessing, maybe your first job, even starting out running your family's manufacturing business. Will you take a moment and share that story with us?
Yeah, well, I don't get asked this very often, but what I will say, it's what truly was truly made who I am, and the importance of my parents and what they've done in their entrepreneurial lives, as we grew up in a family business. And so the backdrop here is, my parents were immigrants from northern India in the 60s, in the late 60s. They came to the UK, which is where, if you haven't spotted from my accent, which is where I sort of was born and raised, for the vast majority of life until I moved to the US. And my parents, who are still in the UK, they were always entrepreneurial. And whilst they came in with, very little money in their pockets, worked incredibly hard, in order to make a life for themselves within the UK. And my father worked in a steel mill, and my mother used to work in a clothing factory. And my father at the weekends would, in the world of doing two jobs, the gig economy that we see today, there was very much the gig economy for the immigrants at that particular time. And my father would work weekends selling clothes in a market, and then during the week, obviously, in a steel mill. My mother would obviously try, take care of me and my two sisters, during the weekends, and we'd find our ways during the week. And they had an opportunity to think about how do they start to make some of the clothing themselves, and develop a manufacturing plant from there, and employing a significant amount of people from there. It doesn't come overnight. It came over many years. It was almost 25 years they were in business, but it was about how did they create that, and I was a part of that. It was it was their evolution. It was their way of building this business out. And we manufactured clothing. It was clothing for kids, and we sold it to the high street, and worked with a lot of the big retailers in the UK back then. But the premise of this is, and where I'm going with this is that it's important to note that when I did grow up in that family business environment, we weren't just sort of elevated into the office jobs. My father was very clear that we would drive an understanding of how the widgets made, how the clothes were made. And I spent many times, understanding the manufacturing process, and understanding how, we knitted our own fabric, how that fabric would go to a dye plant, would go to a print plant, would come back, would get cut, would get manufactured, would get packaged, would get shipped. That's a process, right? But you had to be part of that process, and that's really where I am today. And rolling up your sleeves, and one days you're a delivery driver, the next day I'm putting poppers on on a garment. The next day you might be in the office, doing finances, right? But we were a business that was predicated on rolling up your sleeves and getting things done, but finding smart entrepreneurial ways in which we could navigate, constant changes that were happening in manufacturing. It's made me who I am today. I'm incredibly proud of, the work that my parents did in order to build this from nothing, from the very little that they had. And but here I am today, back in retail, but on the other side of retail, working with the merchants rather than selling to them.
And I imagine this background must give you tremendous empathy for the customers that you and the clients that you work with.
Yeah, empathy for absolutely on all sides of it. It's not just only with the customers. It gives me an incredible amount of empathy, and as we think about the different facets of our work as a retail media network and the different components that make up our business today. Whether it's creative design assets, through to trafficking a campaign, through to selling the widget to our larger suppliers, or every different component and facet of that, I have an enormous amount of respect for, and it's the sum of those parts that really help drive our organization today, as it always did when I was in the family business too.
Amazing. I feel like I could interview for an entire book on this topic, but I want to talk about retail media. You've worked at some incredible brands, Spotify, Walmart, in your career. What was that like? And, some learnings from your roles and time there?
Absolutely. So my career has been, it's been an adventure. We've talked a lot about the family business, which gave me a real solid understanding in how do we not just sort of form a business, but strategically guide like the growth of that organization, workforce dynamics, market dynamics as we've started to shift. And I alluded to those, in talking about the family business. But if you think about my decade that I spent at CBS Interactive, it was CNET Networks that I got acquired by CBS Interactive, where I saw enormous amount of growth in the team across, when I was leading the commercial operation in the UK to driving the business here out of New York. We saw tremendous amount of growth and seeing that growth on a global scale. And then how did I transition from there to I moved to an organization that was actually based out of Barcelona in Spain, not just learning and defining new cultures and ways of working, and working every single day with many, many different nationalities across the organization, driving that connectivity across that team, one singular experience, one singular North Star for the way in which we'd be thinking about our growth opportunity, but then also what does that look like across the multiple regions within which Softonic was the company that Softonic operated in it. Moving to Spotify, where you had a nascent business, a nascent ad business. The streaming world was just really starting to take off, and across all of those different constituents, and Walmart included, there is there's a certain level of, we call it entrepreneurship here at CMX, but there's that level of entrepreneurship on the ways in which you have to navigate through organizations. You have to be incredibly nimble in order to drive the growth, but do it in a way where you build a really solid culture and foundation within the organization. And this is something where, I believe, we can make a difference with CMX. I'm here leading the charge. I'm scaling this platform. We want to do things differently to the way in which the rest of the retail media networks want. We want to make sure that we drive transparency. We want to make sure that we drive optimization and performance for our campaigns. We want to make sure that we continually put the customer first. We want to make sure that we are innovating. And we're really just at the early part of that journey. We're 3.5 years old. We've got enormous runway on how we're going to continue to grow our business, but there's such a plethora of learnings that I'm incredibly grateful for in my career that's got me here, and will hopefully I can transplant into the organization today, but keep learning from. I'm learning every single day from those around me. I have a phenomenal team that I'm so proud of the work that we're doing.
You seem to have this knack for identifying in the market these early yet huge growth opportunities What is it that you look for when you are identifying these? How do you know that that's the one?
I'm going to answer it from a retail media perspective because, yeah, I did see audio as a big opportunity. I did see digital back in the day. I started out in digital in 2001, which was probably one of sort of the more early adopters there. We were still fighting against, print at that particular time, right? But, fast forward to retail media networks, the biggest benefit, and certainly someone like CMX has, is that we can work to drive advertising to a consumer and understand who that consumer is. And there's been a lot of people within the ad space who have been able to do that for a long time. But where we excel, and I believe CMX is at the forefront of this, is our understanding of the consumer and the way in which they transact from both a digital capacity into a physical capacity and the connective tissue between those two environments. So consumers today are starting their journey in an online capacity, finishing it in a physical. They start their journey in a physical and sometimes complete it in digital, right? They just started in a physical, complete in a physical. There's so many different permutations to the choice that the consumer faces today and the way in which they want to shop. Having that connectivity that you can identify who that consumer is, how you deliver a message to that consumer across our platform or off that platform, and then how you understand the attribution model of showing that consumer a message and then how they're purchased. That's where CMX excels. The Extra Care program ties that together so beautifully in a physical and digital environment. There's not actually too many programs across retail media that can really enable that. And that's where, the learnings that I've got from an advertising perspective, and I've seen this early on in how I've thought about retail media networks. That's why this is a massive growth industry. That's why by 2027, it's going to be 110, 120 billion, whichever number you want to look at, industry. That's why it's growing exponentially every single year. That's why it's going to be bigger than linear TV by 2027. It's because we see that level of connectivity across the board and our understanding of the consumer with all of the first-party data that we've got.
So you're heading up a great opportunity. What does your day-to-day look like? Are you with customers? Are you internal? Talk to us about the role and what you like to work on.
Working on something new every day. Juggling a lot of different, being in the moment and looking at today, but also a lot of strategic planning as we think about our growth trajectory as an organization. Collaboration is really key. I say this to my internal team all the time. We're nothing without the enterprise. We work incredibly closely with our merchant partners or our marketing partners or our operational partners or just the other leaders across, my organization to ensure that, we've got a lot of focus on some of the things that we want to achieve individually, but also how do we achieve that as an enterprise and as a collective. We're a strong team. We're well above 100 people today. We keep growing that from an organizational perspective. We've only been in the market for 3.5 years, so we've still got a lot of development work that we've got to get done. We're still building and evolving our culture as an organization. But the one thing that I consistently am proud of is the work that everybody does as we think about growth of CMX, how we put the consumer at the center of everything that we do, and the way in which we drive that view of the consumer collaboratively across our entire organization. So it's a varied day, to your point, David. No day is the same, but and there's just a lot of energy here, right? Like a lot of positive energy that the team drives every single day. And, one thing that we talk about in our organization is, we want to bring joy to our business. We want to bring joy to everything that we do every single day. And we're going to do that with kindness. We're going to do that with that entrepreneurial spirit. But let's just have joy and a little bit of fun doing what we do.
I can't think of anyone who kind of gives me that sense of joy than you. You are, whenever I see you in these interviews, you are a smiling individual. So kudos on that, and to the end of the org. I'm thinking want to put myself in the shoes of a brand who's coming to you. They're going to make an investment in retail media. What does that look like? Search, visuals, creative, online, in store. Just give us kind of a sense of what that investment would translate into.
Yeah, whenever we think about whenever we think about sort of CMX and what we're creating here, we're always thinking about that seamless, personalized experience, targeting our extra care consumers, right? And some of the ways in which we can speak to those consumers are across the different channels that we've got and the different value propositions. So if you look at our digital properties, we've got, so digital properties are like CVS app, we've got CVS.com. If you look at our store network, and we've 9,000 locations across the US, NRF, highlighted that we've got, 80% of shopping is still happening in stores. So, our convenience factor that we take our digital entity as well as our physical entity, and we pair those together. We've got different ways in which we can help our suppliers connect with those consumers across those environments. So whether it's in store, we have digital audio in every single one of our locations. We have 1,700 digital screens that sit at the pharmacy. There are sort of top performing stores across the network. We have screens in all of those stores. We have opportunities at shelf that we work with our partners, Neptune, on. When we come out of the physical environment and we go into a digital environment, we have digital display across our properties. We have digital display that you can buy from us through the trade desk or through DV360 that allows us to talk to our consumers in CTV environments or open web, or be it through one of our premium publisher partners such as Spotify or iHeart or New York Times. And then we also have search as well, and search is really it's a core component of retail media networks, just given the way in which consumers behave. We see 1 in 5 of our consumers, when they come to the digital property, they search. So we already know that they're engaging with that particular product. Additionally, we see that connectivity, as I've talked about, with extra care between the physical and digital properties. We often see, and in that case, there's around about 52% of our consumers that start their journey in a digital capacity, and then they complete it in store within 48 hours. So we know that there's already connectivity, especially given the categories that we've got. But that's really how we look at it. It's supplier to supplier, matching what the supplier needs, and how the supplier wants to build sort of 360 focus campaigns are surrounding that consumer.
And when you think about the brands and the advertisers that you're working with that are doing what you would think of as best in class work in the space, is it that connectivity? Is that what you focus on? Or what are the other things that are really the top advertisers and brands are doing?
Yes, it is that connectivity. And I think that's incredibly important, the way in which we utilize our data to understand audiences. I think the other piece that is incredibly important to us and that our business is predicated on is around transparency. And when we talk about transparency, it's about transparency of how do we measure that effectiveness of that campaign? How do we measure the effectiveness of us reaching that audience? How have we actually driven sales for you as a business? And, we're leading the charge around this from a transparency perspective. We're the first health and wellness retail media network to go live with the new IAB standards, measurement standards across retail media networks. These are really, really important facets as brands lean in more so into retail media networks. It gives us the opportunity to improve our overall standing and game, to move from trade dollars into brand dollars. And we're having more and more of those conversations. But we've got to provide that level of meaningful transparency back to our advertisers that they can compare very clearly when they're spending $1 with us. How does that compare with $1 that they're spending in some of the other channels, more traditional channels that they've been much more accustomed to over the past year? So we're really leaning in on that.
Great kind of synopsis of how to think about these investments. And then on digital in particular, you have retail media. You also have kind of your classic product detail page where I click the add to cart or the buy button. As a brand, how should I be thinking about my investments on paid media, on organic content, those different areas that represent the brand?
Yeah, the digital shelf is I think it's table stakes. It's table stakes in the way in which you should be setting up your PDPs and the way in which your PDPs are appearing to the consumer. Are they searchable? Do they have the most relevant content? Do you have the right image library that's associated with that PDP? And then how do you actually once those table stakes are in place, how do you drive traffic to that PDP and build campaigns around it? And the PDP is one jumping off point, I would say, for the way in which we want to engage the consumer, especially if you're given the way in which consumers are engaging with our site experience. They're either coming straight directly to CVS and then directing themselves through to a PDP. They're either coming in through a side door, be it an email or a promo that they've seen, and that's taking them through to a PDP. But ensuring that your content, more importantly, your product is searchable. I'd sort of just some of the core basics of the way in which we want to work with our suppliers to elevate that experience for the consumer, because if we get that right, it's a great consumer experience, which is a great brand experience, which is a great retail experience.
100%. I wanted to go back to one thing you said earlier, which is trade dollars and brand dollars. Will you just parse that out for us in terms of what that means from a economics and logistics perspective?
Yeah, I think it's no secret to say that retail media networks have predominantly been funded through trade dollars from suppliers, and we've got an opportunity there, right, to continue to lean into those trade dollars and make sure that there's much more connectivity with those brands, with the consumers at our stores. There's a transition happening, and you're seeing it both from the retail media network side in the because we're showing effectiveness of our medium, and CMX is driving efficiency gains for and performance for the dollars that we're seeing on trade. We're seeing that transition into the brand dollars as well on the supplier side. In the same breath, we're also seeing that need for greater transparency now on the supplier side, because suppliers, if we want to move into the brand dollars, we've also got to be able to connect with the same metrics that, as I mentioned before, that we're also that we're being judged against, right? Like if a supplier is going to move $1 from platform A to retail to CMX, what's the efficacy of that particular buy? And those things are moving relatively fast. The piece that always stands out to us, and I think that sets retail media networks outside of what other platforms can do, is we can drive efficacy. We understand audiences, and we understand the way in which their purchasing behavior is within the store footprint. How do we build that level of closed loop reporting that really sets us apart, sets us above and beyond what some of the other platforms can offer? And I think that will be a big lean in and a big opportunity as this sector continues to grow. And then obviously, there's a lot of talk about retail media 3.0 and what does that mean for the industry, with cookie deprecation coming into effect very soon. It's already started. Those properties that not only have lots of first-party data, but can leverage that first-party data to engage with consumers and enable suppliers to, whether it's to commingle audiences in clean room environments. And we recently announced a partnership with LiveRamp and as well as Pinterest, where we are commingling audiences and building out attribution models around that. These are going to be areas that will continue to see the data assets that we have as a foundational layer for the way in which suppliers are looking to engage more consumers across their media mix.
Lots you've done, and it sounds like lots to do. Talk to us about where we are in the build of retail media. The CMX, just 3.5 years old, but you mentioned earlier we're headed toward a market that's 110, 120 billion more, maybe. How do you think about that and 3.0 that's on the horizon?
Yeah, it's the retail media industry is moving at a significant pace. I think we're at a incredibly pivotal moment right now. That we've seen a lot of growth in this category. I think at the last count, I heard that there's over 200 retail media networks. So it almost seems as if there's a retail media network popping up every day. There will be some winners across the board, and we're setting CMX up for success there, and to be at the forefront of leadership in retail media, especially given our national reach and more importantly our consumer footprint across the categories within which we operate. I think it's going to continue to be a dynamic industry. I think we're going to continue to see an evolution of, what role retail media plays, especially as deprecation continues to take effect. Transparency, measurement of the results that I've already mentioned are going to be really, really important. But also, how do we build partnerships that matter? Partnerships not only with our suppliers, but partnerships with, other platforms in order to really enable the way in which retail media can be bought and more importantly, the audiences can be accessed, be it through CTV or be it through other social platforms that we will partner with. But that extension is a big opportunity. And then the last piece that I think is incredibly exciting that no other media has is that we have our store network. There's 5 million people coming through that store network every single day with CVS Pharmacy. How do we engage the consumer in a really creative way as they're entering into the store environment? And what does that look like as you wrap your arms around the consumer and build those 360 programs, but more importantly, build a level of touch point when they're coming from physical or digital to physical. So in-store is a really strong it's a really strong canvas for the way in which we're thinking about being a little bit more creative and accessible to our consumers.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, a lot of great topics. Predictions for the next 12 months, 24 months?
Future's bright. Let's start there. I think we will continue to be the fastest growing channel through 2027, retail media as a whole. And I think there's a few predictions that I'll put out there. I think measurement, transparency, and attribution are a big focal point today. And as retail media, as CMX, we've got to get it right for our brands and our advertisers in order for them to continue to invest and see that growth. Advancements in technology. We're retailers who are moving into becoming publishers, and we want to make sure that we're leveraging the tools and the technology out there, whether it's AI or machine learning or investment in our data analytics tools. And there's a lot of investment that's happening from a CVS Health perspective into CMX, and we want to continue to be at the forefront of what we're seeing here, of what we're doing here. And then the last thing that I would say from a prediction standpoint is don't underestimate the value of the in-store experience. There's we continue to invest in our in-store experience and investing not just in the technology, but investing in our screens or ways in which we can access consumers in our in-store environments. But then, how do we think about that unified measurement and attribution that connects the consumer through the physical advertising that we see in stores as well. So those are the three things that I would definitely put on the watch outs for the next 12 months.
All right, I'll check in with you in 12 months, and but a great experience, obviously, for the consumer, and a great opportunity for all the brands that you work with. If you're up for it, I've got a couple of rapid fire wrap up questions for you.
Go on, I'm always up for it. Let's do it. Go on, Dave.
Yeah, okay, the first one's the toughest because it's only two, but if you had to pick two, which two people have inspired the most in your professional life?
First and foremost, my parents, my father and my mother, and just the way, as we talked about at the top of this podcast, the way in which they work and instill that work ethic in me and my siblings as well. And then there's somebody who was a boss of mine. Her name's Jill Orr. She was a boss of mine for a number of years in the UK. When I was sort of coming up in the digital world, and she taught me a lot. She taught me a lot about the way in which we build PowerPoints and present ourselves. So not just that, but there was a lot of other work that we did. But I'm joking. She's going to hear this and she's going to be like, "Oh, okay," and then she'll be calling me straight away.
Well, you're such a great speaker and presenter, so I know that she must have had a hugely positive impact. So thanks for sharing that. Now, when you do get some time, if you get some time outside of work and family, what are your favorite hobbies? How do you like to spend your time?
I'm pretty active. I like to play a bunch of sports. I like to play soccer when I can. Hiking, I run, I go to the gym a lot. The weather's definitely turning here in New York, so all of those activities make a little bit easier to do these days.
If people want to get in touch with you or find you online, what's the best way for them to reach you and find out more about CVS Media Exchange?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active over there. You can also go to our website. So CMX has a website, which is cvsmediaexchange.com. There's lots of updates that are happening there, both on that site and also on LinkedIn. And we're on the event circuit this year, and we've got a lot going on. There's a retail innovation conference and expo that's coming up. We'll also be at Cannes as well. So look forward to meeting your audience.
I love it. We'll include some links in the show notes so everyone can learn more. So it's a great set and a great lineup. Well, Parbs, if I can say Parbs, I think I'm good now. I have really, really enjoyed talking with you today. You've been an outstanding guest, great insights, and I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, for sure. David, thank you for having me. I appreciate your lean in on this, and really wonderful to get to know you as well. So thank you again.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. Beyond the Shelf is brought to you by It's Rapid. It's Rapid is the platform Pepsi, Sierra Nevada, Revlon, and hundreds of other leading brands and retailers use to build personalized content at scale. Whether that's images, videos, or product descriptions for their product detail pages, shoppable videos or banners for their digital ad campaigns, or sell sheets for sales enablement, brands that use It's Rapid are able to produce high-quality, on-brand content on average more than 80% faster than category competitors. To find out more, please visit itsrapid.ai. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Shelf.